Today I'm going to be going over the timeline of the entirety of Titanfall 1 and Titanfall 2, how it worked, and basically how everything went. So, what we saw in the first cinematic of Titanfall 1 was we saw a montage of basically from around the 1930s to, I believe, somewhere around 2030 to 2040, where we got to them launching the first space shuttles to the moon. And then it kind of fast forwards to them saying that they had discovered, after numerous setbacks, a way to fold space and time and achieve hyper travel, or just basically being able to go to light speed, like in Star Wars, just your basic light speed travel on a ship. And here's where it starts to get vague, and it doesn't tell you much. What happened with Titanfall 1 is essentially the IMC stumbled upon numerous planets that were habitable for humans, and they gave them to the people who would be the people of the frontier to essentially colonize, make farmland, build infrastructure. And once they'd made farmland and built infrastructure, and basically done all the work of making these planets hospitable, not just habitable, but hospitable, they decided, hey, we want these planets back so we can mine their resources and just do pretty much whatever we want with them. We're not really going to tell you what we're doing with it, but you're going to have to go back to the core, which there's two places. There's the core, which is our solar system that we live in real life, where Earth is, and then there's the frontier, which is these new habitable planets that the IMC found and gave to the people of the frontier. And the people of the frontier said, no, that you gave this to us. This is our planet now. These are our planets, this is our solar system, these are our homes. You can't just kick us out. You gave this to us. This is ours now. You can't take it. And well, the IMC didn't like that, so they tried to take it by force, which the people of the frontier responded by forming a militia. Basically just a ragtag group of guerrilla fighters. They didn't have much resources, they were just exactly what they are, a militia. And they were fighting roughly 1 to maybe 3 battles before James McAllen, yes, the guy whose name is on the MCS, James McAllen, defected from the IMC. He had grown disillusioned with the actions of the Interstellar Manufacturing Corporation, otherwise known as the IMC, and decided he would defect because he didn't like the way that they did things, and it wasn't a cause that he was willing to fight for, because he felt that what the IMC was doing was wrong. So he defected and joined the militia. Now, fast forward a little bit, the IMC continued to attack the militia, and eventually the militia decided, hey, we need to fight the IMC head-on and storm some of these refueling depots, because we're running out of fuel. We're not going to be able to fuel the war effort against the IMC if we don't attack these bases. So they went and attacked a refueling depot on the planet Demeter, and the mission was a success. They got fuel, but they realized something. We have this fuel now, but the IMC still has control of the refueling depot. They'll make more fuel for themselves, and we're just going to run out of fuel again. What we need to do is, we can't afford to attack the IMC, so what we need to do is we need to go back there one more time, and we need to destroy this refueling depot. We need to cripple the IMC and bring them down to our level. If they just keep making more fuel, we're going to run out again, and we can't afford to just keep attacking this base and stealing their fuel over and over and over again. Eventually, it's not going to work. And so, what the IMC, or the militia, decided to do to the IMC is they decided they were going to storm the base one more time. But this time, it was way too heavily guarded. Much more heavily guarded than last time. The IMC initially didn't think that the militia would be able to storm the base and steal fuel. They thought if they did that, it would be a suicide mission. But when they saw that it worked the first time, they upped security. Way more Titans, way more pilots, way more grunts. This became almost as well protected as their base of operations. So, what the militia decided to do was they decided to use the creatures that were native to the planet of Demeter. And what the IMC had been doing to repel these creatures is they had these beacons that were repelling all these creatures and stopping them from coming in and attacking the IMC, because they were predators, so they would absolutely come in and attack the IMC. And that theory is proven by the fact that the militia did shut down these beacons and used the cover and distraction of the native animals on the planet to actually break in. And the only problem with this was when James McCallan went to the reactor to destroy the fuel depot, it was too heavily armored for him to just destroy it and get out. He had to destroy it manually. So he made the sacrifice to continue the operation and blow it up manually, which required him to stay there and go down with it. Now, this ended up giving the militia a huge, huge advantage, and almost completely brought the IMC down to their level. The IMC still had way more Titans and raw materials to build Titans and Stalkers and Spectres, and they had way more grunts and way more pilots, and they even had artificial pilots that were just robots. And those are all things the militia didn't have, but that did still severely cripple the IMC, because militaries are run on fuel. Now, this is where we fast forward to the event of Titanfall 2, where you play as Jack Cooper, a militia rifleman who becomes a pilot. After the 3-year span between Titanfall 1 and the event of Titanfall 2, Titanfall 1 happened in the span of 2710, and then Titanfall 2 happened in the year 2713. Now, the reason why the MCS James McCallan is called the MCS James McCallan was in reference to James McCallan. It was basically honoring James McCallan's death and his sacrifice. Now, this is important to know that in Titanfall 1, with the crippling of the IMC from destroying their main refueling depot, the militia had gotten a leg up on them, and the militia was much stronger. They could even afford some better pilot gear, which, as you can see within the game, the pilots have next generation helmets that are similar to the old helmets, but still next generation. Better armor, stuff like that. They had more diverse equipment as well. And they were still at a disadvantage being a militia going up against a massive corporation, but they had gotten a leg up. Now, as you play through the story, you take out some IMC mercenaries, which this is the Apex Predators. Now, another thing, the Apex Predators are not the only mercenary group that decided to side with somebody. The 6-4, they side with who they think is right, not necessarily whoever the highest bidder is, while the Apex Predators do decide who they're going to help based on the highest bidder, which is why they work for the IMC and not the militia. Now, the 6-4, they are another mercenary group who ended up siding with the militia during the war. And they don't necessarily go for the highest bidder, they decided to go for who they thought was right, what the right side of the war to be on was. Not necessarily the winning side, just the right side. The people who are doing the right thing. Now, the IMC continued to attack the militia, but the militia decided to go to Typhon and bring the war to the IMC. But the IMC seemed to have been expecting that because they shot down the MCS James McCallan. And so Cooper ejects on a lifeboat and they just continue the assault. Even though it is kind of a losing battle now because they were ambushed on Typhon. And Lastimosa falls down from the MCS James McCallan before it crashes in his Titan. and he saves Cooper and tries to fight 3 Apex Predators at the same time, but fails. And so Lastimosa dies and hands off his Titan BT-7274 to Jack Cooper, making Jack Cooper BT-7274's active pilot. Now, after that, you have to fight your way through Typhon and continue Lastimosa's mission, which was to meet up with Major Anderson. And you beat a few Apex Predators as you go through, you storm a few facilities, and you beat Kane, Ash, and then you get to the mission Effect and Cause, where you finally meet up with Major Anderson. He's nowhere to be found, and it looks like something blew up and killed everybody. And you end up finding his helmet and replaying a log, basically telling you a bit about what his mission was and why he was there. And you find that he's dead, so the command of the Special Operation 217 transfers to you, giving you a field promotion to Major. So Pilot Cooper is now a Major. So he goes through and he finds the device that Major Anderson had. And he uses it to eventually scan the Ark, which is the power source for something called the Fold Weapon, which folds space and time. Check out my other video, which will have a link in the description, explaining more on the Fold Weapon. But for now, you don't need to know too much about the Fold Weapon other than it needed to be destroyed, because it would otherwise force the militia to give up the frontier by destroying planets. And if it wasn't destroyed, then the militia would lose the war, guaranteed. And so, after Pilot Cooper scans the Ark, they're able to track its energy signature to a base on Typhon, which they end up assaulting, and they just barely escape on a ship called the Draconis. And so, you board the ship with the rest of the militia fleet, the entirety of the militia fleet, and chase after the Draconis, where you fight a mercenary called Viper, who uses a heavily modified Titan, which is a North Star Titan. And so, you fight him, and you beat him, and Jack Cooper is able to get to the Draconis with a fastball. When Viper comes back and actually stops you from getting thrown to the Draconis, there's a big fight between BT and Viper and his North Star, where Viper's hatch gets peeled off by some rockets, and Cooper shoots Viper out of the cockpit. Then, you and BT end up getting thrown onto the Draconis by Viper before he dies, and you guys get the Ark, and you just barely get it, but you guys end up crashing, and BT protects Jack Cooper from the crash. Now, when you wake up after passing out during the crash, BT's missing both legs, one of his arms, and the hatch is still intact, so the Ark is still in BT's cockpit. You meet Blisk face to face for really the second time, and he tells BT that if he doesn't open the cockpit and give them the Ark, then he'll shoot Cooper in the head. BT tries to trick them, but fails to kill Blisk, and they end up getting the Ark and pretty much killing BT. And as BT's final act to protect Jack Cooper, he gives him the SEER kit. SEER stands for Survive, Evade, Resist, and Escape, which isn't too important, but it's a fun little fact. Which it consists of BT-7274's data core, a smart pistol, and a data knife. So Jack Cooper, after receiving the SEER kit from BT, makes his way out and makes contact with Sarah Briggs, who sends him one more Vanguard-class Titan, which is equipped with a Legion loadout. And Jack Cooper inserts BT's data core into BT, and he fights through to get to the Fold Weapon, where he gets covering fire from militia ships, and he finally gets to the Fold Weapon, where Kuben Blisk and Sloane are there with her ion. You fight Sloane and you do end up killing her, but before you can rip open the hatch for the fold weapon, the arc gets injected into the fold weapon and sends out a massive EMP blast that disables BT and causes them to need a hard reset, which Blisk takes advantage of and comes in and disembarks and hops on the cockpit, or the hatch of your cockpit. And he invites Jack Cooper to join the Apex Predators, and doesn't kill him, as he says, "I'm not going to kill you this time, I don't work for free." And BT ends up getting booted up. Martyr gets pissed that Blisk didn't stop you, and BT, unfortunately, throws himself into the Ark and throws you away, and destabilizes the Ark and makes it explode, causing BT to die. However, his sacrifice does save the Frontier and the Militia from the fold weapon ever being able to be used on them. And that is the entire timeline of Titanfall 1 and Titanfall 2. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, and the bell, and I will see you guys in the next one.